Then why bother?
Maybe I'm wrong.
Ask yourself, before you sit down to watch John Wick Chapter 4, what are some of the best action movies ever made? You get some films like Terminator 2 or like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Aliens or even Top Gun Maverick from last year. And so you have to think about what makes those films so great and what makes John Wick Chapter 4 so great. John Wick Chapter 4 is the next in a long line of movies that started off with somebody's dog dying and has now translated over to this globe-trotting sort of experience with tons of action actors being thrown into the mix in 4 movies, and then we're getting spin-offs as well. John Wick 4 obviously stars Keanu Reeves as John Wick, but it also features Donnie Yen, it features Hiroyuki Sanada, it features Scott Adkins, it features Bill Skarsgård, plenty of actors out there in this film that are just absolutely perfect for the roles that they've been cast in, and it also features Ian McShane, who is still just as great, but doesn't get in on the action as much. Those 4 before are really the ones that hold this film up to a higher regard. So when you look at something like John Wick Chapter 4, you have to think, what goes into it? It's a 3-hour movie, but that story structure is a little bit different than your average 3-hour movie. This isn't Avengers Endgame or Avatar: The Way of Water or even something else that's similarly lengthed. It is coming in at 2 hours and 50 minutes, but you get 3 sections of the movie, and I know 3-act structure is not something that's new or any new revelation here, but each act sort of acts like its own mini movie. So with the first part of it, you have basically John trying to gather his allies and get away from the table as they try to attack and get him. You get an excellent duel between Donnie Yen and Hiroyuki Sanada at the end of Act 1 that is breathtaking. It is fantastic in its execution. You get a lot of the best work from Donnie Yen in this section, and you get a great action set piece on a roof through this entire sort of complex in Japan, and it is one of the most thrilling, tense sections that would be in any other movie the best section of it, and you don't even get to the best parts until after this one. So Act 1 basically is its own little mini movie. Then Act 2, you get a lot of John trying to find basically another family to take him in so he can make a challenge to the head of the table, played by Bill Skarsgård, Marquis. But you get a lot of work here done from the other characters. This is where the other characters get sort of their chance to shine over John. And that's not to say that he's not the central point of this movie. John Wick is still very much the center of John Wick Chapter 4, but you get a lot of good work from Donnie Yen, from Scott Adkins, and it just plays off a little bit differently. So that second act, it goes through and you get John basically getting his chance at a duel with the head of the table, and then the third act kicks in, and if you haven't seen The Warriors, go check it out, because The Warriors basically, it's a very big influence on this third section of the film, and you even get basically, I would say a 4th little mini section that's the end, but I won't spoil anything about that. But this third section, it sees the entirety of Paris going after John Wick, trying to kill him. The price for his head keeps going up and up and up, and it's just absolutely tense and thrilling and amazing and awesome. The only complaint I have is that the 2 licensed songs that are very incredibly famous in the movie that they use are cover versions, which sucks. I would have loved to hear the original versions. It would have made for a better homage to the Warriors, but you didn't really get them here. But the action is just where this movie's at, and so if you haven't seen any of the John Wick movies, I don't know why you're watching this review, but the action is basically known as what's called gun fu, and so it's like kung fu with guns, and the guns are more than just guns of people just pointing and clicking and shooting at people. It's something a whole different, feel to it. So those guns that you get, the gun fu action, takes on a whole nother level. People are getting blasted left and right. They're getting thrown off of buildings, hit by cars, punched through waterfalls at dance nightclubs. It's insane. And so you get a lot of just really solid action set pieces, and some that are absolutely breathtaking. There's one featuring a dragon's breath shotgun that it plays out like a video game, and if on the corner of the screen here while John's going through, if it was just flashing, hit start for player 2 to join the action or something like that, it wouldn't look out of place. It's just that tense, that amazing, that thrilling. I can't say enough about this section. My jaw was on the floor the entire time I was watching it in the theater, and it just keeps going. And when you think, okay, this is it, this is over with, it's an extended piece of this film that is even like a mini movie of itself is this one scene. And if you've seen Death Wish 3, I love that movie. There's a scene sort of like this in Death Wish 3 where Charles Bronson's going along the street blasting away bad guys, and the little nerdy, police chief joins in, and, he hops in, and the camera zooms out and makes it look like it's like the player 2 has joined. You get something like that in this movie, except it's with the other characters hopping in and out. It's like couch co-op or something like that. And so it all adds up to one of the finest action movies I've ever seen, one of the finest action movies in recent memory. John Wick Chapter 4, you get everything in this film. You get great performances, you get great stunt work. If Chad Stahelski is directing your movie or doing the stunt coordination on it, you're getting something good out of it. The writers, the characters, the plot, the length of the movie, it doesn't feel like it's overly long. It's just everything about this, with a couple of tiny criticisms. If you're going to nitpick, the movie is a bit long. You could have cut out, a couple 20 minutes or so, and then it'd be 2.5 hours instead of 3 hours. But this is John Wick Chapter 4 we're talking about here. You want all of the John Wick you can get. You want all the action you can get. And even through all of that action, all of that bloodshed, it never feels like it's just doing it for the sake of doing it. It feels like it's a heartfelt sort of story that we're getting on the screen here. The characters have lots of excellent motivation. Donnie Yen's character, Kane, you feel for him, and Donnie Yen's performance comes out. Donnie Yen's not blind, but he's played two of the best blind characters in the history of cinema in this and Rogue One, where the action reflects that, the stunts reflect that. It's never like, oh, this looks like just like a dude that's not blind that's swinging a cane around. No, it fits so perfectly with all of the stunt work and all of everything that goes into this film. And his motivations are great. The motivations for the other characters, like the tracker, and for even the head of the table, even for, everybody in the film has motivations that fit and that feel real. And it's so refreshing to see out of an action movie that's the fourth one in the series that we get something like that. Those motivations and those sort of characters all add together to make John Wick Chapter 4 the most heartfelt in the series. It's one of the most heartfelt action movies I've seen out there. And once you get to the third act and you feel like you've got to this tippy top of a point, it gets to another funny scene. There's one scene in particular that feels like the whole movie, because it's like a microcosm of the movie, where you get to this point where you're like, oh yes, they're going to reach the goal, and then they get kicked back down and they have to go all the way up again, and it feels so right. So when you're watching John Wick Chapter 4, like I said in the beginning, you have to ask yourself, what are some of the best action movies of all time? Does it fit in with all of those best action movies of all time? And the resounding answer is yes. John Wick Chapter 4 is one of the best action movies I've ever seen. It is one of the finest examples of action, sort of gun-fu, kung-fu, whatever else, mixed with just excellent performances from all of the cast. It is one of the finest films, one of the finest action films I've ever seen, and you can go check it out in theaters on March 24th, and make sure to go see it, and make sure to go watch the rest of the John Wick movies. Watch The Warriors too. And so John Wick Chapter 4, if I had to give it a perfect score, I would. I don't like giving out 100 out of 100s, because it feels like it's like everyone gives 100 out of 100s nowadays, but a 98 out of 100 that's what I'm going to give John Wick Chapter 4. It is that damn good. So make sure to go see it in theaters and support this movie and support action cinema in general, because you won't regret it. And if you like more film content like John Wick Chapter 4, check out these videos right here.